us for 3 seconds, spat on the ground and left. We entered the cabin. We arranged between the two Farah's body on the bed. Anika asked me to pray for a while and that I would accompany her until the sun came out. If it reaches dawn, everything will be fine. Believe me, I have never been so happy to see the sunlight. Without wasting time, I pulled the strings so that Farah would be one of the first to be cremated. The woman was cremated by a believing man, very different from the person of her grandson. He gave it to me before dying, making me swear that I would always carry it with me since at some point I was going to need it. My friends, until then I always doubted religion, and I carried that cross with me only because of the promise that I had made to my grandfather when designating, the cabin. I placed it on the wooden door of the entrance. Anika was able to explain the reason for everything to me. Darlin, being a young girl, fully surrendered to voodoo, and this generated friction between her and her mother. Darlin left home but never completely. Every now and then she would come back to see her mom. Sister Danica could not bear the idea of a life without her mother, and in some way or another they wanted them to be together, light and darkness. Perhaps this story is not strictly a horror story, at least not in a strict sense of the word. However, I think it is very necessary to include it because that was Miguel's anecdote and it raises a new trigger to the story. Coming now that I am writing about my friend Doctor, I am becoming more and more convinced that everything is united by means of an invisible thread. I lost track of Miguel a long time ago. The last time we spoke was in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. Miguel always assured me that he did not know how or why he had arrived where he arrived, and this, my dear readers and listeners, is that Dr. Gonzalez came to be in the Vatican. He was able to integrate a Yuki group and their respective representatives. He studied demonology and ethnology for years. Surely those of us who are followers of the channel remember a shocking story that was published about 5 years ago. A club full of sin, a tremendous video of almost 40 minutes in length with maintaining the audio-visual of a psychophony and first-hand testimonies. Today that video can be considered as media material. Antonio, at my request, deleted it. And it is that around that story strange things began to happen. To begin with, the original author of the story, Walter Enrique Quevedo, became ill with his heart a few days after the story. The young protagonist of the anecdote suffered constant harassment wherever he went, in addition to the fact that after revealing the story of the club, strange events began in his house. Screams, voices, shadows, and strange noises. In short, it is a cursed place, very cursed because of a demonic pact on the part of the founders. The owners of the club are people with a lot of money and heavy people. At Walter's request, I validate a pseudonym to repost. The story was impressive because immediately a dozen friend requests arrived. There was a lot of persistence from people to get some information. The thing is that I comment on the situation in my WhatsApp group and Miguel talks to me in private to tell me 2 things. 1, that I delete the story from Taringa and the fan page. 2, that I be careful about getting involved with them. Talking with the doctor, he confirms what I already knew. They belong to an economic group that worked for the Vatican, and that, although he could not tell me much, he was going to reveal something light. Look, Ezekiel, we know and catalog all the cursed points in the world, these behind closed doors, but the church keeps track and follows them. Don't ask and listen to me. And delete everything from this story. They are bad and powerful people from Argentina and Mexico. Now then, how did Miguel get to work in Rome? Well, it all starts in Haiti. After the events narrated between Anika and Darlin, after cremating Farah, the doctor took the girl and introduced her to the chaplain of his army. The priest moved heaven and earth to get the girl to stay with them. Anika had a dream long before the events. She already knew about the earthquake and she already knew that her mother was going to die. She already knew that her sister, in her pain, would try to keep her mother at all costs in this world, even if it was only an empty lifeless body, and the girl finally also knew that many people were going to come to help, but that among all those people she would only be able to help a young Spanish doctor, although she warned Miguel that before leaving Haiti he would have to experience something ugly, whether he wanted to or not. This did not depend on his will, it was going to happen and that was it. And that would be the first of 2 tests. Come, my dear readers and listeners, everything is related to everything. Miguel's last anecdote is left for the following story. The beginning, fear in Haiti, lasted more or less until the middle of 2012. We were ordered to go to Costa Rica for training there. I met a beautiful woman, we fell in love and she reciprocated. I decided to leave everything since in Costa Rica I made my life and my family. The aftereffects after the earthquake were atrocious. A poor country that became poorer after the natural disaster. The tremor forced, among many things, to regulate and organize the civil registry of people. Can you believe that until then there was no regulation of the most basic of records in Haiti? Anika was of great help. She acted as the official translator for us. With the passing of the months, I noticed the girl interested in me, but not in that sense that you imagine. I felt that the young woman cared a lot about me, for my safety more than anything. 2012 arrived and Annika did not leave my side for anything in the world. Almost 2 months after my departure from Haiti, my young friend, one afternoon, I don't know how much longer, hugged me very tightly out of nowhere and began to cry inconsolably. Between dreams she told me again and again that she had a dream and that the first test was about to arrive. I tried to calm her down, that it would not be long before I left, that nothing was going to happen. Man plans and God disposes. I was told once that in April 2012 the United Nations and UNICEF decided to launch a large-scale campaign against cholera. Since the earthquake there have been several outbreaks, and in 2011 the cases were growing in numbers. All available health personnel would be affected by the campaign. Many people approached the health centers, but many others did not. Then they forced us to go out in search of them. Tabar, a commune of the district of Port-au-Prince, was my designated destination. 2 years passed after the earthquake and things were just as bad. Destroyed buildings, missing people, lack of water and food, bodies trapped in the rubble. I arrived at a very miserable neighborhood that I don't remember at this time. I went with 3 doctors, 5 nurses and Annika, who acted as translator and bodyguard. People were piling on top of you and practically didn't let you breathe. Some asked you for other things and put their hand in and took out what they could. In one of those many pile-ups, I lost sight of the girl and my colleagues. I ended up getting lost between streets and alleys. I arrived at an open field where there was only one house standing, well painted and cared for. It was very curious and everything around it was destroyed. My cell phone had been stolen moments before. I had no money and I approached the house. Before knocking on the door, it opened and standing in front of me was Darlene. The woman looked at me surprised and without letting me speak began to make signs, letting me understand that I was not welcome in that place, that I should leave and that I should do it quickly. I could not react The old man stepped in my way and forced me inside. I managed to understand that someone needed my help. As a doctor, I was led to a back room and Darla grabbed my arm, trying to stop me from walking further. At that moment, a large man struck her face. I reacted to defend the woman, but the man shoved me into the room. Inside, 5 people sat around a small fire. The old man entered and made a sound with his C. The large man, after closing the door, did the same. I understood from their gestures what I had to do. So, I sat down and everyone began murmuring in low voices. The fire grew until it reached the ceiling for 3 seconds, and when it returned to normal, a hunched figure emerged from the flames. His skin was black, not like that of a dark-skinned person but truly black like a black hole. His face lacked life. He was completely bald and had no eyes, only dark, empty sockets. It was difficult to explain, but my mind told me that whatever stood before me was not human. The old man shook himself off and sat cross-legged facing me. He stared at me for a minute before speaking in perfect Spanish. "Miguel, how are you? A lot is going through your mind, isn't it? Who are you?" I barely managed to reply with a trembling voice. "You stole something that belonged to me. Now what are we going to do, little thief?" "That woman was the black figure shouted. I realized and imagined that everything was connected to Darlene and Farah, the first trial. "God," I barely whispered. "God is not here," the figure replied, staring at me. "Sincerely, the first trial." "Miguel, you keep thinking so many things with that stupid head of yours. Do you really believe I don't know about that false, hypocritical feeling of compassion? Helping others won't bring you any glory. Don't you feel important saving people? And now you speak of the one whose name I do not say, yet he never mattered to you." No. I barely responded, not knowing what to say. "Curse the first trial. Lies. While we speak of him, do you now understand why he does not help you? But I can help you if you want." "No. The first trial, I do not lie." I was terrified. My heart pounded, and with my right hand, I clutched the cross my grandfather had given me. Ever since that episode with Farah, I always wore it around my neck. At that moment, I heard familiar voices. Annika was shouting my name along with my colleagues. That man, stared at me defiantly, grinned, and disappeared before my eyes. Darlene went to find her sister Yana, who immediately ran to notify the chaplain. Without wasting any time, a squad was organized. In the search report, it was stated that these people kidnapped me in an attempt to extract some money and food from the army. They weren't detained for long. After 5 months in prison, they were released because there was neither room to hold them nor food to sustain them. Darlene accompanied us to the camp but didn't stay long. She insisted she had to leave for another place to ensure her safety. Anik and Darlin said goodbye with a heartfelt hug early on a Friday morning.